Hello and welcome back. Today I'm building the 143rd Land Rover Series 1 starter set from Airfix. Here it is in all its glory. As you can see, the bodywork is made up of many parts. They've actually used some of the panel lines, steering wheel, and there's the tailgate and the clear parts. I'm going to be building this as a replica of Huey, HUE 166, the first ever pre-production Land Rover. As you can see, it's a slightly shorter wheelbase than this kit, so I'll be doing some modifications, including cutting it shorter, as you can see here. Now thankfully, a lot of the panel lines have been detailed onto the kit, and they're nice and straight. The Land Rover was always built as a modular vehicle, so lots of these sections could be removed and replaced fairly easily. Here I'm using a nice new sharp craft blade to cut into these sections and then sanding them flat afterwards. I'm also using a little bit of Mr. Hobby putty in order to fill up these door handles on the side. The original car had no external door handles and instead just this canvas flap to access the interior one. There we are. Now just checking the size of things inside and showing where to cut, and then using these Tamiya snippers to make a nice straight cut. Now test fitting all these parts of the cab. Fitment on this kit seems pretty good. There's a few other things that need to be removed, like these lights at the front. Also, when assembling this front section, I used a little bit of putty to fill some gaps that weren't there on the real car. Adding the seats and some of the other panels to the front. I did glue this together and then realised that it'd be better to leave some of it apart. When it goes together like so, now just test fitting it. And there's the front cab all test fitted. After priming this in white, I used Tamiya Cockpit Green XF71. Thinned 50/50 with X20A, and I'd also added a little bit of white just to brighten it up. Now you can see here how I've cut down these sections at the back. These side sections are now about 30mm long, and again used a craft blade and these clippers to cut them down to shape. I'll try and get these cuts to be as straight as possible. I also needed to cut a little bit away from the bottom section here so that it fits in with the rear tailgate. Do lots of dry fitting to make sure you're happy with how yours go together if you're going to do this yourself. Test to make sure that they're the same size. And then putting them onto the bed itself to work out how much I need to remove off that section. This styrene is quite thick, so using the clippers is helpful. It's also helpful that there's lines on the underside so that you can make sure that you cut in a straight line as possible. Make sure you get this the right way around. And there it is with the tailgate. And here, just testing, you can see I'll need to cut away a little bit more of the bed to fit it together to the front. Then painted it the same cockpit green. Supposedly the Wilkes brothers of Rover had bought up a lot of the leftover paint from the Spitfire after the Second World War. You can see how I've cut the bed back a little bit, and I'm going to add that internal wall, though the top section of this with the window wasn't on Huey, so I'm cutting that off and then smoothing it down as well. Lower section of the seats was also removed, and that glues into place like so. And that's how it'll look. And yeah, much happier with the fitment now. You can see how the radiator has a mesh that covers the entire front. So I used some masking tape to cut a template. There you are, happy with that size. And then I put this over some spare Tamiya mesh left over from a kit I'd made before. This is just plastic and it's sort of squared. Tried to cut that out carefully. There we are. Make sure that it fits okay. Then afterwards I painted some of the sections black where they are just holes in the original radiator. And then I painted the mesh with some Revell iron. Tried to thin this so that it didn't clog up the holes in the mesh. I also had to cut this section off the back here because you should really have put these parts together after adding the lights, but never mind, I've done this already. The lights still fitted nicely even after this. I painted a bit of silver on the back of the headlights as well. They went in with no glue needed. So there we are. And that's how it looks with the mesh. It's not that clear, but it does look a little bit more like the real version. Then a bit of iron was used on this spare tyre thing on the bonnet. And I printed off some new decal number plates with HUE 166. These were then stuck onto some white vinyl stickers to make them stand out nice and clear. Now these side sections around the window need to be kind of iron or steel, so I masked off the bit that stays green and then painted Revell iron around the outside. Just trying to scratch away some of the mistakes I made here. There's a small section that goes in the front of the bumper, and I had these little photo etch parts which looked the right kind of shape, so I added one of those onto the middle. The hole that goes behind it on the real one I also drilled out using a micro drill. Interior seats were Humbrol 96, which is this kind of greyish blue recommended in the kit. Steering wheel black with some sections in silver. And then you've got some more bits that go on the underside. Chassis parts I did in iron, and the suspension parts I did in black. Again, these were cut down to size. The rear suspension was shortened to about 29mm. Yeah, just checking that the how much needs to be removed off the front of them. These modifications were really easy to do. And there we are. Looks pretty good if you ask me. I'd also painted the bodywork using some Mr. Colour GX Clear. And the suspension parts were done in semi-gloss black from Revell. Adding the uppers of those seats. Then adding the iron details to the tailgate. This isn't an exact match to Huey's tailgate, but it's pretty close. For instance, there was no Land Rover badge on the back, so I should really have sanded that down, but never mind. Rear lights were black, and the little step at the bottom was semi-gloss black as well. Adding a small amount of super glue to attach the windows. Careful not to attach too much, as I don't want the clear parts to fog. Fitment of these is really good. Same with the windscreen here. There's a couple of decals that go in the interior, including the dials, and there's a little Land Rover plate. And there the cab bodywork is assembled. That distinctive classic Land Rover shape. For the axles on the underside, the front one can be installed as it is in the instructions. However, the rear one needs a bit of modification. Put this section here on straight away. I think that might be where it connects to the gearbox, I'm not sure. And then I super glued the pickup bed onto the cabin at the front. Held that for a bit to make sure it was secure. And then once I'd done this, I then used that to measure up how long the rear drive shaft needed to be and cut it down to length. Make sure that these axles are nice and securely glued before adding the wheels. Wheels were again done in that green with some matte black around the outside for the tyres. Added details in semi-gloss black and a bit of steel in the centres of some of them. These just sandwiched together with a couple of pins. Just make sure that you get the front ones and the rear ones round the right way. Might want to put something heavy on that to make sure that they sandwich into place. Front ones have the little more prominent centre and the rear ones don't. And these were able to go into place without the need for any glue. Do the same for the other side, give them a gentle squeeze. Then you've got the spare tyre, which can go on the bonnet like many of them did. However, the spare in Huey is currently in the bed, as you can see here. So I used a small amount of super glue just to stick that into place. Nice little feature to have. I added the badge, stuck to a little bit of sheet styrene to the radiator at the front. There we are. And then there's a couple of support pieces that go onto the chassis at the bottom. These were painted in iron just like the other ones. There you are, you can see it compared to the first Mini. Next was to do the canopy. So for this I used some broad masking tape, which I then painted in Revell ochre. This has a matte finish, so should look pretty good for the canvas. I needed to create the shape of the roof, so I decided to use the one in the kit, but I removed these ribbing sections first. Tried to sand them down and also gave them a little bit of a scrape with a craft blade. Then measured that up and added this piece of tape. I'd cut some small rectangles of tape for the sides and then used those to attach them onto this section. So none of these canvas bits are actually glued. They're just stuck on using the tape. This section that went over the top is slightly too big, so I was able to use this to measure it out and work out how big it needed to be. Give it a slight sort of curve at the top to replicate the real one. There we are. To create the wing mirror at the front, I used a little circle of sheet styrene and a little bit of this jeweler's wire, painted it black, silver on one side, drilled a hole, and there we are, little wing mirror. There's some more clips that go on the bonnet, which I used a little bit of sheet styrene bent into this kind of U shape, super glued those onto either side and painted the top black. There's some small little clips which go in places, which I used another bit of tape, painted matte green. And then I used that to do this straps that go along the back as well. These were glued into place and then cut down to size. Finally, there are these little semaphore indicators which go on the side of the windows. Just used a little bit of leftover styrene for these, painted black with a bit of silver on the edge, and there it is, it's finished. Here it is compared to the original car. The colour's not an exact match, but I'm still pretty happy with it. Here's some final pictures of the build. I bought this kit last year, so the planning for this had taken quite a while, but the build itself took only about a week, so if you're after a quick and easy build of a classic Land Rover, I do recommend this kit. I haven't been able to get it 100% accurate to the subject car, but I think it's pretty close. And as you can see here, I also took it to see its original version. Let me know what you think. And this also completes my hat trick of British classic cars, as shown here in the museum, and shown here in 1/43rd scale. Thanks a lot for watching. Let me know what you think down below. Have you built one of these? Would you like to? Make sure you subscribe, click the notification bell, and I'll see you soon.